It was another one of those days. Long hours working on a project with unreasonable deadlines, and then trying to explain the impossible to the client. I've had a lot of days like that lately, mostly due to my usual work ethic and inability to say no. So I found myself at the local grocery store that evening, trying to go through whatever was left in the hot department at this late hour in search of a suitable dinner. It was a typical December weather day in the Pacific Northwest. The morning forecast had promised 40-degree heat and showers throughout the day, but the temperature had only risen to 37 and snow was falling in buckets. As I headed toward the ticket office, I happened to notice someone vaguely familiar coming out of the main exit. This can't be happening, I thought. I only caught a glimpse of her profile and hairstyle. Everything else was well wrapped up for this weather. I was so stunned I didn't hear the cashier the first time. 4278, sir, the cashier repeated. Oh, yes, sorry. During the short drive home, I was shocked and immersed in reflection. This is where it all started so many years ago. To be honest, I hardly thought about her or those circumstances anymore. I had my own problems to deal with. I lost my wonderful wife of 23 years just 10 months ago in an accident. I suppose for every person who has lost a loved one, an accident is something out of the ordinary. My wife, Carissa, was coming out of a department store where she had just bought a Valentine's Day gift and was hit by a drunk driver who drove around everyone in a busy intersection, but swerved onto the sidewalk in front of the store, hitting several pedestrians, including Carissa. The pain and suffering I endured was indescribable after her death. The manner and timing of it all must have contributed to it. After the funeral, I fell into a deep despair. Our son Brady, and even more so our daughter Claire, helped me escape its grip and got me to agree to grief counseling. To my surprise, I learned a lot about myself. I even learned about unexpressed grief over the loss of my first wife, even though she hadn't died. I left the therapist not cured, but a more determined person. Then I immersed myself in the work, and I've been there ever since. Barely had time to put warm chicken and mashed potatoes on my plate, tweaked enough to be edible, when my cell phone rang. It was my daughter, Claire. Hey girl, how's it going? I asked cheerfully. After our shared tragedy, I always made a brave face for the kids. Brady was now 22 and had an internship at a financial corporation in London. Claire was 25 and living only 30 minutes away from home with her husband Richard. They were trying to start a family, which pleased me immensely. Is everything okay, Daddy? She asked, and not in a good way. Of course, sweetheart, I replied. Just a long day at the office. Why, aren't I supposed to be like this? No, of course not, she stumbled half-heartedly. I was instantly concerned, as my daughter had always been very understanding. What's going on, Claire? I asked. Did something happen when you were at the grocery store today? Now I was on high alert. Claire? What's going on? I blanched. Talk to me, young lady. Okay, Daddy, she tried to start again. Look, there's something I have to tell you and it's important. But I don't think you're going to like it. I won't interrupt you? Just my dinner, I told her. So if you don't mind listening to me chew, give it to me. It's about Mom, she blurted out. It was weird, since she always called Carissa Mom. Okay. I left her alone. Go on. Not Mom. Claire realized her mistake. My mom, Ivy. Just like that, and in the same instant, panic swept over me. Anger, worry, and confusion fought for the right to be the dominant emotion at the moment. What about her? My voice was firm. She's sick, Daddy, was her short answer. Very sick. And, I wanted to say, so what? But held back. Look, Daddy, there's a lot going on, she sighed. Maybe I should come over so we can talk it over. And I didn't want her to see the gamut of emotions that would surely flash across my face. I ignored her suggestion. It was a bombshell I needed to hear, after all. As far as I knew, Claire and her birth mother hadn't communicated since Claire was too young to remember, since about 1 year old. What do you mean, very sick? Daddy, she shifted. I'm just leaving now. I'll be there in half an hour. Claire passed out before I could say a word. My stomach didn't want to accept food, but I forced myself to eat at least some chicken because I'd probably need a few stiff drinks before this night was over. Claire came in, looking both apologetic and scared at the same time. I offered her a drink and we sat down together at the kitchen table. Okay, Claire, I preemptively said. Let's start from the beginning. My favorite daughter took a deep breath and began. So, first of all, she said, I never wanted to keep this from you. I want you to know this. After I'm done, I think you'll understand. She paused and tried to fidget in her chair, getting comfortable. Mom, Ivy contacted me right after my 22nd birthday. I was shocked, to say the least. Our first conversation was unbearably awkward, but then it got easier. I had talked to my mom, Carissa, many times about her, and she was supportive of me having some sort of relationship with my birth mother. We talked about how I could do that and still be sure that she could never hurt me like she did when she left us. My head was spinning. I had no idea they were talking. Just me, then, I snorted. I was the only ignorant one? I wanted to tell you right away, she replied. I just knew how much she hurt you, and I didn't want you to be mad at me by association. Carissa told me it wasn't worth keeping it from you, especially if I didn't want to cause potential harm to our relationship. I was going to tell you last January, but Richard and I went on that 10-day cruise, and right after we got back, there was an accident. I couldn't tell you after that. You were so depressed, even despondent. Last year you saw Christmas presents under the tree and asked when everyone was in the room, but I couldn't tell you. I knew I lied, and it hurt, because I promised myself I'd never do that to you. Go on, I said angrily, trying to keep my cool. We talked from time to time, she continued. We talked about what she did, to us and why. She would often apologize and I would get angry and say it was a little late. She never apologized to me. Anger was making me petty. That's for sure. And it's a good thing, because I never would have accepted them. I know, Daddy, she said soothingly. That's partly why I didn't tell you. Carissa made me realize that it wasn't about your anger at Ivy. It was about you and me being together as father and daughter. Anyway, last summer, Ivy called, and I knew right away that something was wrong. She was upset and told me that she had been diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer. Of course, she was scared. I went with her to some of her appointments. I attended the first round of chemotherapy. This was news to me. I was suddenly angry at Carissa for not saying anything. I was angry at my daughter. Why did you go? Where's her cool husband? I couldn't help myself. He left her years ago, Dad. So what does she want from you? Or me? I asked gruffly. She made her bed. I'm sorry, but it's true. It has to do with the fact that I saw her at the grocery store today, right? Does she need money or something? No, Dad, Claire said with a wistful look. She needs companionship. I grinned, then laughed loudly. The best I can do is money. She's lucky to get that. She doesn't need money, Claire corrected. She's got plenty of it after dating that asshole Lucas. The phrase made me sit up sharply in my chair. The mere mention of his name could send me into a blind rage. Lucas goddamn Fry, the man who stole my wife Ivy. It hit me fast and hard that I still thought that. After everything I'd learned in counseling, that was where I'd gone in the first place. No, Ivy wasn't stolen, kidnapped, or forced. She went willingly. Asshole was the nickname I'd given Lucas Fry over the years. There was no negative affectation in it, no desire to immortalize him in a derogatory way. I simply hated the man with my whole being. Claire saw that things weren't going well. She was fanning the embers of a fire that she thought had long since gone out. I knew my daughter better than anyone else in my life, including Carissa. There was pleading in her eyes, even as she tried to find a hint of compassion in mine. I don't know why you're asking that. I dismissed the thought and walked in the other direction. Claire, Why are you asking me for something you know I can't do? Did she put you up to it? Claire was silent, her lips pressed together. I knew what was going on because I was the one who had taught her this. Claire had been impulsive in her youth, quick to lose her temper, if you could call it that. I spent a lot of time teaching her that the most successful people take the time to think before they speak and choose their words purposefully. No, Daddy, she began. She didn't ask me to. If anything, she asked me not to do it, at least indirectly. I'm asking mostly for me, I suppose. I also believe I'm asking for you. That's ridiculous, was all I could manage to mutter. No, it's not, she interrupted. Hear me out, please. You're my father, and I love you very much. I loved Carissa almost as much. Her death almost crushed me. I'm still young, so it was a first for me. A peek behind the curtain of the inevitable. Then I thought about how hard it was for you. Even at your age and with all the obstacles in your life, including Ivy. And even though Ivy and I aren't close, she continued, she's still my own mother. When she's gone in the next few months, everything I've ever needed in a motherly sense will cease to exist. Carissa, and soon Ivy, will cease to exist. Of course, I will have my wonderful father, Richard, and soon a family of my own. The duties and responsibilities of matriarch will fall to me, and never again will I have a mother to guide me. At the last sentence, she sobbed, and I instinctively rushed to her. I pressed her head to my breast, as I had done 1,000 times, and let her cry. While she cried, I had many thoughts. What Claire was describing could be compared to what parents experience when their children leave the nest for college or somewhere else. Almost everyone I've ever talked to about it had at least one thing in common. They never saw it coming, even though it was there from the beginning. A kid goes to school, and deep down we all know what's coming next, but we don't think about it or don't want to think about it. Then one day, the kid comes home with a pile of brochures, and it's like waking up and having a glass of cold water splashed in your face. It was exactly the same with Carissa and me. Claire was my daughter and Carissa's stepdaughter. She adopted her, so it was more than that. Brady was our biological son, and even though we knew he would be gone soon, like Claire, we weren't emotionally ready for it. For Claire, at such a young age, it was a painful part of life and death that she was going through. But I couldn't let her feelings on the subject govern mine. She looked up at me, no longer shedding tears, and kissed my cheek. Then she got up to blow her nose and fetch a glass of water. Daddy, she began again before sitting down, I've been thinking hard. Other than Richard, you're the most important person in my life. Okay, maybe you two are related. She chuckled. Either way, after all this loss, I'm going to need you more than ever. She paused to appraise me. You've made progress, Dad. I've seen it. The counseling helped, of course. But I've also seen that you've pulled back a bit. You've immersed yourself in your work and become more cautious. I can't explain it exactly, but I know one thing. I want my old father back. I want my children to know the man who raised me, not some other version of that man. She took a sip of water and continued. Meeting her, spending some time with her, that's not for her. It's for you. Maybe she'll earn a little forgiveness or absolution before she dies, but what you really need is closure. You never got it, not in the sense that she left us, like she left you. I know how much you loved. Love, Carissa. It didn't take long for my tears to flow. She sat on my lap to comfort me in return. You've closed that chapter, Daddy. You've made peace with the tragedy and the loss of Mom. But I think you need to close another chapter before you can find real peace. In a few months, it will be just you and me. Remember the song we used to sing when I was a little girl? The one we used to sing when we were just hanging out? You and me against the world? It talked about times long past and the future. What's that old phrase you said to me once? It seems to be in Gaelic. Auld Lang Syne, I said more to myself than to her. The literal translation is long ago, and in English it means times long past. The title of the song was exactly that. You and me against the world, except I changed the words from mom to dad. I can't believe you memorized it. She smiled broadly and hugged my cheek fondly. I love you, Daddy. It was a significant moment for the Sullivans, at least for her and me. Then my mind returned to the current issue at hand. Claire, I said softly, I don't know about what you're suggesting. I never tried to contact her because I knew I didn't want an explanation. It would have only hurt more. I had to be strong for you. There was no point in swimming in the mire. The mess she'd made was all her fault. She wanted him. She chose him over me. And you. The end. Claire nodded slightly. Yes, I know, she agreed with my temper. But those were times long past, Dad. And now we're living in the now. She'll be gone soon. It won't matter much, except that you can get answers and close the book of the past once and for all. I'll have to think about that, honey, I told her. I know that too. She kissed my cheek and stood up. Don't think too long. Time is not on your side. A restless night of sleep was expected when my head touched the pillow. Ivy overwhelmed my dreams and thoughts. My wife also found herself among the co-conspirators. In one of the dreams I recalled the next morning, Carissa was sitting with me on a Victorian bench in some garden. She was holding my hands and explaining that Claire needed her help, and she couldn't risk hurting me after all these years. I found an old Helen Reddy song on YouTube and listened to it while I shaved the next morning. It brought back a lot of memories, both good and bad. I figured as much. Ivy wasn't exactly trying to hide it, so it was easy to get suspicious. Lucas Fry was a promising singer and songwriter. His band, the Pine Needles, was a silly play on words due to our geographic location in the Pacific Northwest. Fry was also Ivy's high school sweetheart. As she recounted, he dumped her more times than I could keep track of, but she kept coming back for another. I had always considered myself a logical and reasonable person, even back then. We met, dated for a year, and got married. It wasn't even a year later that my opinion of myself turned out to be wrong. Ivy got pregnant right away. It wasn't in the plan, but at least I was happy about the news. A few months after Claire was born, Fry found a way to contact Ivy again and talked her into meeting somehow. I never found out the details. She didn't lie about meeting him. She would go to his studio, which was just a well-stocked garage, and listen to the band. I was furious. She was telling me to stop being paranoid. She loved me. She was there with the whole band, and only to help him write songs like back in the day. At first, I told her I didn't want her to be with him. The temptation was too great, and I pointed out to her that she already recognized how he was affecting her. When that didn't work, I forbade her from taking Claire to band practice. Fry's band recorded an album, and they were discovered by an agent. Things with the label moved quickly. Ivy became emotionally uninterested in me and Claire. I feared the worst, but I couldn't get her to talk to me. I came home from work on Christmas Eve and found some of Ivy's bags packed and standing in the foyer. She was in the bedroom packing the rest of her things. I just stood there looking at her, daring her to say out loud what we both knew it meant. I have to go, she tried the delicate approach. I didn't tell you the whole truth. I couldn't. I have real feelings for him, and I need to find out once and for all what those feelings mean. My little imperfect life shattered at her revelation. I thought of everything I could have done to prevent this moment, including beating one or both of them to a pulp. Ivy ignored my anguished look and pose. They're starting a small tour of the Midwest in 2 days. I'm going with them. I'm sorry to burden you with this. You're not sorry, liar, I spat. Damn liar. What about Claire? Does she mean as little to you as I do? Ivy didn't answer. She grabbed her last bag and headed into the living room. In a last desperate attempt, I blocked the hallway. You're not going anywhere, I shouted. Not as long as you're my wife. She paused to gauge my anger. At least it seemed that way to me. After all these years, I couldn't remember all the details. Ivy slowly set her bag down and, looking me straight in the eye, said, "You can't stop me, Mark. I'll just call him or the police." "Of course," I laughed. "Call him right now and tell him to come get you. I'm begging you." Ivy looked at me strangely, like she didn't know me very well. She walked past me, dragging her suitcase behind her. I wasn't going to stop her, and that's when it hit me. It also hit me that I didn't want to do this anymore. She carried the big suitcase out the door and somehow loaded it into the back seat. When she came back for the smaller one, she stopped and looked at me blankly. "The tour runs through January 14th. I'll be back on the 3rd or 4th. I'm not going on a vacation or any adventure. I've got some things to figure out, and then I'll be back. We'll talk then." "Mark, look at me," I cut off, overwhelmed with a wide range of emotions, and she noticed it. On the table is a detailed list of care for our daughter. I feed her very infrequently now, but there are 4 bottles in the fridge in case she gets cranky in my absence. I was still in a bit of shock. She walked over to me and said, "I'm sorry," and tried to kiss me. Something snapped me out of my reverie, and I quickly pulled back defensively. For some reason, this elicited a hurt look from Ivy, but she recovered, turned her back to me, and headed for her future. I never saw her again. The note, I can't call it a letter, came on January 2nd. She knew right away that she and Lucas were meant to be together. She didn't want to take our little girl away from her father, and since Fry was suddenly in a win-win situation, she didn't want anything from me, not even our house. In return, she simply asked me to treat Claire like the treasure she was and raise her properly. My parents and sister were shocked and outraged. Mom and Dad found out about her betrayal at Christmas when they called. They had moved to Southern California the year before to be closer to my little sister. When they moved, I thought, as I suspected, that they favored my sister over me. But that turned out to be wrong when, right after Christmas dinner, Mom and Dad went to the Los Angeles airport and flew over to help me with Claire. Looking back over the years, I was certain that Claire wouldn't have survived if it hadn't been for my mom. Even with the notes left for me by that slut, I had no idea how to care for Claire. Mom had told me many times that I didn't value myself enough and that people, moms and dads, had had to tough it out for millennia. Dad gave me moral support, and we spent more than one late night consoling over Ivy's actions. He took care of me, and Mom took care of Claire. The day after receiving Ivy's note, Dad told me to take it to a lawyer and begin the process of getting legal custody of my daughter and laying the groundwork for recognizing her as abandoned and neglected. Strangely, I didn't hear a word from Ivy's parents. They never seemed too interested in me, though it wasn't outwardly apparent. I felt it rather than saw or heard it. They probably thought Ivy had changed her residence. A year and a month later, I met Carissa at a specialized daycare center for single parents with children under the age of 3. She had a double degree in child psychology and child nutrition. We hit it off right away, but I was still a very damaged soul. I didn't trust people, and my faith in humanity was severely shaken. I constantly wondered why a woman like Carissa would fall in love with someone like me. What did she want? That was the question I inevitably asked myself. My future wife guessed my dilemma but didn't challenge it. She kept it to herself and was patient and caring with my heart and mind until I finally came out of my condition and fell head over heels in love. My love for her and her untimely death weighed heavily on me that day as I thought about her and Claire going behind my back with Ivy. I felt like a traitor. I wondered how many other things my loving wife was hiding from me. But strangely enough, by the evening, my feelings for Ivy had softened. Completely? No. In a way, opening the wound had renewed my irritation. But once I thought about it, much of what I'd experienced 20 years ago seemed far less important in the grand scheme of life. Besides, she was dying. In a way, I was ashamed of myself for not being sad about it. The truth was that she could no longer harm Claire or me. It was only a day and a half later when I called Claire the next morning and told her I wasn't committing to anything, but was willing to meet Ivy at a neutral place and at least talk. I decided to do this for my daughter's sake as she seemed to need it. When Claire approached the table at Outback Steakhouse, followed by her mother, I immediately felt conflicted. I chose that place because no one we knew went there. Ivy stepped forward, and I struggled to force myself to smile. She had an unhealthy skin color and was very weak. I hadn't been there for my mother when she got cancer, just like she hadn't been there for me my whole life. I felt guilty that I couldn't do that. Ivy was the first person I had ever studied intimately who was so sick. I was often distracted during meals. Claire and Ivy felt it too. We sat there, tangled in our confusion, and the conversation dragged on. For most of the meal, Ivy made small talk with Claire. No talk of the past, and to my dismay, no apologies. The longer we played getting to know each other, the more tense the air became. Ivy was on a special diet, but ordered a flourless cake for dessert. I couldn't take it then. "So, Ivy," I said, clearing my throat, "what exactly do you want from me?" Ivy's smile disappeared, and she shifted her gaze from me to Claire. "Daddy." Claire shouted a few decibels louder. Ivy looked sad, but not angry. She gently touched Claire's hand and said softly, "Claire, it's okay. I told you that things might not go the way you think. It's okay." That made me angry. She was taking some kind of moral responsibility, perhaps trying to turn Claire against me. "No, Ivy," I hissed, trying to keep my voice down. "This isn't all right. I'm here, against my better judgment, asking a legitimate question. Let's get this straight. Whether you're sick or not, I have absolutely no trust in you. And yet here I sit. So let's stop talking platitudes and get to the point." Ivy looked even sadder. Claire looked shocked enough that she was ready to faint. In her entire life, she'd never seen her father act like this, not even with the punk kid in high school who tried to hit on her at the homecoming dance. My ex-wife, however, was no spring chicken. She quickly came to her senses and looked me straight in the eye. "Okay, Mark," she said in a measured voice. "A simple answer to a simple question. I need a companion for a few weeks. I have things I want to do before I die, and I'm afraid to do or try to do almost all of them alone. I'm too sick to do some of them, and I don't want to die trying to complete my to-do list." She paused to let her words soak in. At the same time, Claire's father is alone and still struggling with a terrible loss. In between doing my list, I need to absolve my greatest sins, and since you are the person I committed most of them against, you need to hear what I have to say too. This is exactly what I talked to our daughter about. I'm also sure your wife knew about it and would approve. How dare that evil bitch mention Carissa's name? My blood pressure skyrocketed. "Don't you dare claim you know anything about Carissa," I hissed. "Don't you dare mention her name in front of me." Claire reached across the table and took my hand, her eyes pleading with me to calm down. While this was happening, Ivy looked over her shoulder and indicated for the server to bring the check. "It's okay, Claire," she reassured me. "I gave your father quite a bit of trouble today and pulled a few scabs off old wounds. His reaction is perfectly normal." Ivy looked at me, looking right through me. "Mark," she said, "I'm just asking you to think about it. Yes, I suppose you would eventually do something good for the man who so callously ripped your heart out. I have no imagination of making amends or making amends. That won't happen even if I live to be 100 years old. But I've never had the courage to tell you why, and that's something I can live with. Besides, I pay for everything, so listening to a dying wicked witch won't cost you a dime. It's the truth, and if you can't bring yourself to believe it, then just call me and say no." All evening at home, I was frantic. Claire hadn't said 2 words to me after Ivy paid the check, and we all left. How dare that damn whore interfere in our family, cause problems just because she was going to check out. She was as selfish as ever. Well, I wasn't going to play her game. Soon she would be gone and I could get rid of her once and for all. The next morning was no better. I tried to call Claire twice, but she left a message on her voicemail, which she rarely did. Just before noon, I got a call from an unfamiliar number, but I knew who it was. Mark Sullivan, I answered professionally just in case. Hi, Mark, she answered. Do you have a minute? This isn't a good time, Ivy, I muttered. Besides, I'm not sure we have anything to say to each other. Nonsense, she exclaimed. I'm sorry about last night. Having Claire around had the opposite effect on both of us. I should have known better. What I ask has always been about us, and only us. I'm sure all your thoughts of honoring my request are gone now. Here is my last attempt to change your mind. I was really working on another deadline, so I didn't have time for her excuses. I can't, I told her. At least not right now. You have my cell phone number, so if you want to talk to me, call me at 7 tonight. I'll be ready to talk then. The night before, I had discussed a few compromises. Perhaps she would agree to one of them. She called exactly at the appointed time. We exchanged pleasantries, and then she cut to the chase. Again, I'm sorry about last night. Obviously, I bring out the worst feelings in you, and deservedly so. Claire looked like she didn't know you. That's my fault, too. Ivy, I intervened, just stop. I know what you're doing. It's pretty damn obvious. It's been 20-odd years. You made your bed. I was forced to come back, and I did. I had the best life imaginable until some drunken bastard took it all away from me. So what can you do for me? What can cleanse your soul? There was an eerie silence. I almost asked if she was still here. I'll answer in order if you don't mind, she replied in a thin voice. First, there's nothing I can do if you don't accept my apologies, or if you're uncomfortable with me offering them. You have earned them, and repeatedly. I won't stop offering them. Secondly, she paused briefly. The man who loved you the most? She told Claire that her father had overcome every obstacle in his life, and that she was very proud of him. If there's anything left unresolved, it's what happened between you and me. I have no idea what exactly it is or these things, but I have a good idea, and if I can help make you whole, it's the least I can do before I die. I said nothing, and she finished. And finally, I doubt anything can cleanse my soul. But on my wish list is the possibility of my own redemption. I'm selfish again. At the very least, to explain myself to the person I hurt the most and maybe give them something they need to complete. I pondered her words. I told her that I had my own business, and I couldn't just take a month off to whimsically chat with her, even if I wanted to. I told her that any time we spent together would be mostly for Claire's benefit. I told her that no matter what she said, she shouldn't expect forgiveness. I then laid out the parameters. Ivy said she would think about my proposal, but was 99% sure she would accept it. Later that night, Claire called me and began with a heartfelt apology. Daddy, I love you, she told me. I'm really glad you decided to give her a chance, but I also never knew how much you were mad at her. Don't get your hopes up, honey, I said. We have a lot of baggage, and neither of us can predict the exact outcome. I might even end up being angrier at Ivy than I've ever been. The next day, Ivy texted me and agreed to my terms. It was the strangest contract I'd ever been involved in. I gave Ivy a choice of just two, items from her wish list. I wasn't going to spend the entire month with her. She asked for one more. Ed, will you let me spend at least part of Christmas with you and Claire? That was it. I either lost my mind or was unexpectedly generous and told her she could. She chose one simple request, which was that I accompany her to the top of the Space Needle at sunset. This request seemed suspicious to me. She could have easily taken a plane to Seattle. We lived only 3 hours away by car. Ivy could have taken a cab or Uber to the park and taken the elevator down. The Tuesday before Christmas, Ivy and I drove to the airport and boarded the plane. The ride was terribly awkward. I decided that Ivy must have changed her mind about her plan. She was a little more chipper than she had been that night at the restaurant, but her skin color was awful. I couldn't help but sympathize with her. While waiting to board our flight, Ivy broached the subject of Claire's childhood. Was she a happy child? She asked cautiously. Did she need any kind of special counseling? No, I answered evenly. She was only 2 years old when Carissa appeared in our lives. She was too young to remember or understand. I was different. I had no idea why I said that. I promised myself over and over again that I would talk about my feelings as little as possible during those dark days. She left the phrase and seemed to reflect. It seemed to me that things were not going right, but I bit my tongue. This was her show, and maybe she'd cancel the whole damn thing. On the airplane, Ivy dozed off almost immediately. I wondered how much of her fatigue was due to her illness and how much was due to the medication. Her face, relaxed in sleep, seemed younger. It was more familiar, like it had been when she had not yet left. Then I thought of her and Fry, and I had the urge to strangle her in flight. It would be a much more painful fate for her, I decided. Ivy took a long time to recover after the plane landed. It could have been the effects of the medication, too, or more likely her muscles had betrayed her. Betrayal, I thought. Sit. I helped her to her seat at the gate, and she pulled a box of pills out of her purse. She seemed to double-check the many pills before she swallowed them. I'm sorry, she said. I want to enjoy this. What Ivy didn't know was that I'd made reservations at a very busy haute cuisine restaurant in the Needle. If she wanted to unload, she could start as early as this night. During the cab ride from SeaTac, she had plenty of opportunities to talk, but there was no way she could find her voice. By the time we arrived, the sun had already lowered into the winter sky. Ivy seemed fascinated by the structure. She touched the beams at the base. While those inside were busy in the gift store, Ivy looked up, down, and in all directions. She amused me. I knew it was her first time up there, but it was like she'd never been anywhere high and wasn't surprised. As we rode the elevator, she squeezed my hand tightly and leaned into me for support. It wasn't an endearment. I walked her to the west side of the building, and we had to wait for a large group of tourists to take their pictures. Are you okay? I asked, genuinely worried. A lot of pain, she replied hoarsely. I'll be fine. Seeing an opening at the railing at last, I guided her there, letting her hold onto the barrier. I expected her to want to take some pictures, maybe even pose with me. I was prepared for that, but to my surprise, she just stood next to me and watched the sunset. It's beautiful, she said in a barely audible whisper. She wasn't talking to me. She wasn't talking to herself or anyone else. As I pondered this first of her last days, emotions overwhelmed me. I had hated her for so long that I felt ashamed that I had any compassion for her. There was guilt, too. It had to do with the fleeting thought of how unfair it was that she had outlived my wonderful wife. But neither had anything to do with the third. Ivy took her right hand off the handrail and placed it on my forearm. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder as the sun disappeared behind Puget Sound. I finally realized at least one thing. Knowing her fate, Ivy wasn't going to ask permission or worry about something showing up. She waited another good 5 minutes, taking in the colors and the impending darkness of the December twilight. Ivy turned slightly toward me and kissed the very shoulder she'd been leaning on. Thank you for this, she said to me. I waited until she turned away and wiped a few tears from my eyes. Hey, I said, letting her take my hand again. I have a little surprise. At first, her face looked concerned. Then her eyes opened wide when I told her about dinner. After making sure she was ready, we headed into the restaurant, and as I had already found out, the owner took us to a table right away. Ivy asked me the time, and when I told her the time, she pulled out her pillbox again and began her regimen. The conversation was more animated, but still forced. She wanted to know how I had managed to build the business so well while taking care of Claire. I told her about my parents' arrival that first Christmas. She seemed to keep forgetting that Carissa had come into my life shortly after she left me. How long have you known? It sounded sudden. I immediately caught her gaze. How long did you know about me and him before I left? I suspected. I took a deep breath and continued. It wasn't that you were hiding it, more like poking me in the face. I tried to pretend it didn't happen. Ivy nodded slowly, mulling over her next words. It was more guilt than anything else. She said it so nonchalantly that I was taken aback. Hardly, was all I dared to say. Yes, she said very quietly, probably not wanting to overexcite me in a crowded place. I was very confused. Maybe not. Probably more like a very confused monster. But I still knew what was right and wrong. You were my husband, and I was supposed to fall in love with you. We had just had our first child together. Every time I tried to justify to myself how I'd screwed it up, my thoughts went back to him. Come on, I said reproachfully. We're here on a bucket list expedition. You can at least humor me a little. In fact, I can't think of a single reason why you'd lie, cheat, or deceive me or yourself anymore. There's no point. She knew I was talking about her imminent demise. Her attentive face suddenly contorted as if she'd had a cucumber inoculation. After a long moment, she surprised me. Yes, she said, you are right. Some habits are hard to give up, especially if you're constantly lying to yourself. She must have noticed the change in my gaze. Mark, please do me a favor. No matter how much time we spend together, please, when you see bullshit, call me that. I should have talked to you back then. Okay, I replied. When did you decide to leave with him? That question surprised her. I wasn't going to be the only one. Fry found out about the tour 4 days before Christmas. He asked me to go with him. He said he loved me, and that we could never figure out our true feelings when I would spend an hour or two with him and then go home to my family. I made my decision on Christmas Eve. I was scared to death, but I had to know. Of all the things she said or acknowledged, what struck me was that she used his last name. It was inappropriate. Maybe it's time to address the BS again, I said. You were in love with him long before you met me. No, Mark, she replied. I was in love. He also scared me. There was an unspoken danger in him. I mistook that feeling for love. Fine, I said angrily. You never came back. Care to explain that? I'll explain, she told me. But not tonight. We finished our meal in complete silence. Ivy confessed that she'd used a private investigator to find Claire a few years ago, and sometimes followed her around just to observe. I didn't know what to say to that either. The confession was borderline creepy. The car ride was again stilted and a little wordy. On the airplane, she slept, and so did I. It had been an exhausting day for me. Claire questioned me about how the day had gone, and I held myself back. I needed to rethink a lot of what I had seen. Claire kept insisting. I did something I never thought I'd do. Claire, damn it! I pounced on her. Can't you just leave it alone? I don't want to talk about it. I've already told you that it might not go the way you think it will. For God's sake, it's none of your business anyway. My daughter abruptly ended the conversation, but not before I heard her stifle a sob. I had never treated her like that before. I apologized over and over via text. She wouldn't return my calls. Maybe. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect when I woke up Christmas morning. I certainly felt sorry for myself and didn't know if I would see my daughter and her husband. If not, it would be the first Christmas of our lives. I blamed it on Ivy too. But at 11:30, Claire walked through the door, as happy as if nothing had happened between us. She rushed over to me and hugged me tightly, exclaiming, "Merry Christmas." She whispered in my ear, "Sorry, Daddy," as Richard walked over to give them a hug. Just behind them stood Ivy, unsure and a little speechless. "Merry Christmas, Ivy," I greeted her warmly. Her face lit up brighter than a Christmas tree, and she stood with her arms open in case I wanted to accept her offer. I hugged her, glad I wouldn't be alone on this special day. After the greetings, Ivy moved into the kitchen and seemed to start familiarizing herself with the surroundings. I cast a questioning glance at her. "Claire said we're having ham for dinner," she said, with more excitement than I expected. "Which side were you planning on cooking it on?" I looked at Claire, then back at Ivy. "Mashed potatoes," I replied, "and peas." My ex came closer, as if she wanted to give me another hug. "Mark," she asked affably, "will you let me make one last holiday dish?" What could I say to that? Sure, I replied, stammering a little. Uh, let me know what you need help with. Will? Well, we can all help. For a moment, she looked a little stunned, as if I doubted her abilities. But that immediately changed when she realized that I was just being kind. At least kind enough to let her boss her around in my kitchen. Once we were done with that, Richard went to the car and brought in a few bags of groceries. I helped unpack the many side dishes and desserts that weren't on the menu. Judging from our trip to Seattle, I didn't hold out much hope that Ivy would be up to the task. When I saw the canned pumpkin for the pie, I was sure of it. However, Ivy surprised us. She fought through the obvious pain of the morning and afternoon and put herself into cooking like it was the last meal she would ever make. Then it hit me. I spent a few emotional minutes hiding in the bathroom trying to gather my thoughts. Grieving for her, I confused myself, my compass. Just before serving, Ivy began to succumb to her exhaustion. It was obvious that she was frustrated to the extreme with her limitations. I decided to step in to help, but Claire gently touched my shoulder. Go keep Richard company, Dad, she said in a half-whisper. I'll manage. It took Ivy a long time to clean herself up in the restroom. I was worried enough that I decided to check on her by asking through the door. I'm fine, Mark, she said. I'll be out in a minute. Dinner was exquisite. She'd never cooked anything even close to similar when we were married. Wow, Ivy, praised Claire. Where did you learn to cook like that? My ex-wife seemed to ponder what to say and how to say it. After I left, she paused again. I decided I was going to start doing something I liked or had always liked. I took cooking classes for 2 years and then went to a local culinary school for 2 semesters. You're very talented. I didn't know what else to say. It was a shame that now, at the end of the day, she was so successful. Of course, I never found out when she dumped the asshole or if he dumped her. That's something we won't talk about that evening. After getting cleaned up, we sat down in the living room and Claire began handing out gifts. She handed me a card first. I had to wonder because we always had a tradition of opening gifts first and then cards. Inside the heart card was a black and white photo of a sonogram. I looked at it perplexed. Yes, Daddy, she squeaked excitedly, jumping into my lap. You're going to be a grandpa. There was an uproar and congratulations sprinkled all around. I hadn't seen a smile like that on Ivy's face since she'd left a few months ago. When Claire started handing out the gifts to Ivy, I felt a little uneasy. Richard, being a handy guy and a newly announced father, opened a $2,500 Home Depot gift card. He seemed to turn to me as if asking permission to accept it. I sat motionless. Claire's gift had become the cursed gift. There were actually 2 gifts. The first was $1,000 worth of diapers. Claire didn't like it, but Ivy wouldn't be the first parent or grandparent to offer such a gift. When Claire found she had one more to open, she looked at her mother reproachfully. Inside was a felt box containing a Tiffany necklace made of Akoya pearls, a piece of jewelry worth between $2,500 and $5,000. No, Mom, she stammered. Ivy, I can't accept this. It's too much. The words left unspoken spoke louder. Claire's love, respect, and forgiveness were not for sale. Ivy realized this immediately as a few tears rolled down her cheek. Ever since I allowed this little party, I kept thinking about what gift to give Ivy. The option I kept coming back to the most was the biggest lump of coal I could get. I also considered not getting her anything at all. But at that moment, I decided to offer something that was somewhere between 5th and 10th on my list. I excused myself to the bathroom while the 2 women quietly debated the merits of the gift. I returned with a small wrapped box and held it out to Ivy, interrupting the ongoing argument. She looked at me stunned. Soon the unwrapped box was quite recognizable. It was the kind you'd find at a game store or novelty store. Ivy immediately guessed that the item was more from our generation than Claire's. It was an old game that lovers shared after a wedding or on Valentine's Day. A bunch of coupons giving each other something of value, sometimes redeemable. She looked at me with anticipation and fear in her eyes. She realized that the contents could be good or weird, or they could bring the holiday to a quick end. Carefully, she removed the lid. Inside lay a loan coupon. It read, "1 free life mistake repellent. You are forgiven." Ivy's eyes rolled upward. Claire and I quickly shortened the distance, with me getting there first. She didn't faint, but she would have fallen off the chair without my intervention. Richard ran to the kitchen for a glass of water, and Claire knelt in front of her mother, asking if she was all right. We didn't get to Richard and my presence until 30 minutes later. Next chapter. Claire hugged me in the back seat of our car, saying goodbye to me and something else. Richard helped Ivy down the cruise ship gangway and waited for the steward to return with the wheelchair. "Try to have fun, Daddy," she said affectionately. "And please, whatever happens, don't kill her." She smiled mockingly, cupping my cheeks with both hands. I smiled back. "I'm not promising anything, sweetheart," I replied half jokingly, half seriously. "Seriously, Daddy," her smile dissipated. "There's no point right now." Of course, she was right. Ivy was in decline, and we'd all seen it over the last week. Christmas Day had started out with a burst of energy for her, but at the same time it had been hard. She had only 2 days to recuperate before leaving on her trip. If at all, she could go on the mend. The same steward gave Ivy a free ride to our room at the bow of the ship. I guessed that in a way Ivy wanted to look forward instead of looking back. She would be embarking on a new journey in a few weeks, if you believed in such things. Getting comfortable, I asked what she wanted to do. "Can we look around the ship?" she asked, "and wave to the people on the dock as the ship pulls away?" Partly she reminded me of happier days before. Partly she reminded me of Claire when she was a little girl. When I offered her a chair, she immediately declined, but I was ready for it. "The ship is as long as 3 soccer fields, Ivy," I scolded. "Do you want to have fun and see everything, or do you want to stop for a break every 10 minutes? She hesitantly agreed. I got the impression she wanted to hold my hand rather than push me along behind her. But I pushed her for the next few hours. On the senior deck, she rose from her chair to play shuffleboard with me. Otherwise, it was a solemn and awkward day, comparable to our trip to the Space Needle. There was still an 800-pound gorilla looming over us. I tried to pamper Ivy. Perhaps that's not quite the right word. As we stood on deck watching the ship round the Canadian coast, it started snowing. I tried to take off my scarf and wrap it around her to keep her warm. She emphatically told me to stop. She didn't want that. Other incidents during the day were akin to annoyances, childish outbursts. I was beginning to curse myself for agreeing to accompany her. For dinner, we ended up at the first mate's table. Even the money Ivy had swiped from the asshole on her way out didn't help us get a seat next to the captain. When Ivy ordered an after-dinner cocktail along with the wine she'd already had, I questioned whether it was a good idea. The look I got along with the bloody eye roll told me that I had overdone it and embarrassed her. She continued her conversation with the couple to her right, ignoring me for the rest of the meal. When people started to leave the table to dance or look around, I asked, "Are we ready to go, Ivy?" She looked at me like I had 2 heads. "What?" she asked softly. "No. The evening is just getting started, and I'm having fun." That look and the sarcastic answer were almost forgotten memories from our past. They came back with renewed vigor, and anger swept over me. "So, don't you need medication or something?" snarled I. "Or anything else?" she always argued, answering a question with a question. "If you want to be somewhere else or you're not comfortable here with me, you can go." This was a new side of Ivy. I was stunned, and she picked up on that. "Mark," she said more calmly, "you can stay or not. I'm having fun, and I thought you were too. You've been acting like a parent all day. A little drink after dinner won't hurt me, considering what I have going on right now. Just relax." I was angry enough to lash out, but I didn't want to make a scene. I frowned, stood up, and walked out from behind the desk. Our cabin had 2 double beds. I got ready, but it was only 10 o'clock, and I lay there thinking about how I was going to survive the next 4 days. The ship wasn't due back in port until late afternoon on New Year's Day. Ivy was dying, and nothing could change that. I talked myself into thinking she needed my company so she could talk about her transgressions, to confess her sins. Now I saw that she was still the same selfish Ivy, having fun with strangers instead of doing important things. And not so long ago, she'd brushed me off because I'd tried to look out for her. Screw it, I thought. I can use the size of the ship to my advantage for the next few days, and she'll find someone else to push her weak ass around. Somehow I managed to fall asleep. I didn't know how Ivy got back to our room, but when I woke up, she was already asleep on the bed next to mine. By the time I made my 3 S's, she was already up and sipping coffee in the living room. She was reading the ship's entertainment brochures and didn't meet my gaze, but looked over the edge of it. "Good morning," she said stoically when I didn't greet her first. "Are you still not in the mood after yesterday?" "You know what? Screw you, Ivy." I couldn't help myself. "I'm trying to be nice, and it's the same old with you. I'm going to breakfast. You decide what you want to do for the rest of the day. I'm sure I can keep myself busy." I walked out and headed for the buffet I had read about before dozing off the previous night. I was halfway there when I saw her roll into the room. One of the servers immediately came over to offer assistance, and she looked around the room and finally pointed in my direction. He sat her down at the table to my left and gave her a perplexed look when I didn't stand up or offer any greeting. "Mark," she said with a pleading look, "I'm so sorry. My behavior last night was disgusting. I behaved horribly this morning, too." I said nothing, and she continued. "I'm trying to enjoy it. I originally assumed I'd be traveling alone, so I'm trying to adjust." "You asked me to accompany you, remember?" I asked sarcastically. "As for your behavior, it's been common for the better part of 25 years. I expect it. I just don't have to put up with it anymore." Ivy hung her head, then looked up again with false bravado. "So, a piece of paper for Christmas? It was just a gesture, wasn't it? You haven't truly forgiven me, have you?" Before I could answer, Ivy continued. "This is going to be harder than I thought. I was planning on talking about it tomorrow night. Even talk to you if I needed to. I wanted to do it right in the middle of our trip so we could enjoy the first few days and, depending on how our conversation goes, maybe enjoy the last part as well." The woman's chutzpah. "Yes, but I wanted to win the lottery, have 4 points on the golf course and a faithful wife. We don't always get what we want." She rolled her eyes, which I was getting sick of. "You had a faithful wife, and I'm sure she would have stayed that way if it weren't for fate. Your first wife was a fool to think she fell in love with another man, otherwise she would have been the same. You still have your best years ahead of you, so pay for golf lessons and buy a ticket more often." The bitch was going to play the death card. "Okay, Ivy," he growled through clenched teeth. "Enough of this damned smug resentment." Poor Ivy, as always. "I know you're sick, but damn it, you're always the victim." "Ah," I exclaimed, getting up and leaving her where she stood. People all over the dining room looked at me and I didn't care. Around 3 o'clock, Ivy found me by one of the pools. Another ship's employee was pushing her chair. As I watched her approach, I noticed that she looked beat up from head to toe. Even with the bright sun streaming through the glass ceiling, her skin had a gray tint to it. The cruise hadn't worked out the way she'd hoped. Too bad. "May I sit with you?" she asked formally. When I nodded, she reached into her clutch and handed the man a $100 tip. She moved to the chaise lounge next to me and looked out of place without her swimsuit on. "Can I ask you a few questions?" She was polite or cautious. "Sure," I replied. Part of me was acting childish. Another part of me was judging myself for agreeing to this trip. In the back of my mind, I was still mad at her after all this time had passed. "What did you think when you got my note? About me not coming back?" "It confirmed my suspicions," I answered honestly. You've always been his, and you finally realized it. Ivy shook her head. No, Mark, it's my fault, she said. Not what you thought, but what you felt. It was easy. I'd done this exercise dozens of times with my therapist. Betrayal. If you thought I had finally realized that Fry was my true love, why were you surprised to be betrayed? I never said I was surprised, Ivy. I don't understand, she replied quickly. If you felt betrayed by announcing that I was not coming home, then you expected my return. That's why I said surprised. I hated to have this conversation, but she wasn't going to leave me alone. I wasn't going to hide in the broom closet during a 4-day Alaskan cruise. Ivy, I sighed and took a deep breath. I didn't expect much from you once you started hanging out with his band. You were in love with him. I knew I was losing you. We had an infant. I had to get food on the table. I knew you'd go to him eventually. But I never thought you would just walk away, abandoning your daughter. It was despicable. She thought it over. If I had left with Claire, would you have fought for her? Would you have fought harder for her than you did for me? Back off, Ivy. I spat. I fought for you. I really did. If I'd come back like I was going to, would you have taken me back? No, I told her. No way. We would have gotten divorced, shared custody. What happened to you, Mark? What are you even talking about, Ivy? I was on edge again. Nothing happened. Everything happened. Be specific. That one time, she said, when I was talking to Carissa, she said something that struck me. She described you as cautious, timid, stable, and considerate. What struck me was that this was not the man I married. It wasn't you at all. So what happened? You freaking happened. I needed to calm down. Ivy nodded slowly in agreement, as if those were the words she wanted to hear. I wasn't about to pass up a chance like this. You ran off with your high school boyfriend. You didn't care about your husband or your daughter. You had the life you wanted with some selfish jerk, and now you're rich and can take off early with no regrets. I had to be a slow and steady turtle, I continued my tirade, so that I could take care of our daughter, so I could take care of my new family. I didn't always get to do what I wanted to do, even the opposite. Yes, sometimes I hated you and envied you at the same time, but I'll still be a slow and steady turtle long after you're gone, so wipe that smug expression off your face, dear. With that last comment, the expression did indeed disappear. Good. It certainly didn't dissuade her. That's what I thought, she said. And if I could assume that you were leaning on Carissa as much as she was leaning on you, and then she just left. My need to know where she was going with this overrode my desire to get her to stop talking about my sweet, wonderful wife. She expected me to brush it off, but I didn't, and she continued. You were doing everything right. In your mind, you were on the right track, as was your life, until the accident happened. Is that right? I didn't answer enthusiastically, but it was partly true. Instead, I nodded slowly. She left you, as did I, so that was the end of it for me. She was taken from me, unlike you. Don't you dare equate the two events. She never had any intention of leaving me. Then why are you still fighting it? She cut in again. Everyone knows it was an accident. Maybe you were playing it safe for the greater good, but why aren't you moving on? What's holding you back? I'm not. My thoughts scattered in different directions. I'm not. I'll move on, in my own time. Just like that. Ivy didn't say anything else. She just stared at me, waiting. I loved her. I was no longer in control of myself. I loved her more than I loved anyone, ever. Shit. She's been taken. I don't need another love. I don't need a girlfriend or a relationship. A relationship, huh? I'm clearly not cut out for them. I lose every time. Ivy was still looking at me thoughtfully, and she seemed more than okay with that. The very thought, much less the reality of me being so outspoken, was annoying. You wouldn't understand, Ivy. I corrected myself. You got what you wanted, and more cream on top. Ivy finally said. I don't think so, but we'll talk about it later. Tomorrow. Why tomorrow? I demanded. Why all this cryptic nonsense? Maybe it's not important enough for me to hear it from you. Honestly, I just don't care. I stood up and motioned for her to sit in the chair. She didn't resist or make any snide remarks. I could see that she wanted to stay. No, she just didn't want to leave. She probably thought I was purposely interrupting her fun. Dinner was silent. She was in her own thoughts, and so was I. Later, in our room, Ivy seemed disoriented and weak. She asked me to help her into the shower. Besides the obvious, illness, there were several marks on Ivy's body that hadn't been there when we were a couple. She was alert enough to notice my stare. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Later, I lay in bed and tried to assess what I saw. There were tattoos. I'd expected to see them, but the sores and scars that looked like burn scars spoke of what? Resentment? Self-deprecation? It made me wonder about her life after Claire and I, and whether my assessment might be wrong. In the morning, I found Ivy at the kitchen counter, writing furiously. She absent-mindedly greeted me with a good morning. I went to take a shower, and when I came out after getting dressed, Ivy announced the plans for the day with a wide smile on her face. Mark, we're getting off the ship in Vancouver. She pointed to her packed bags. I stared at her, amazed. I want to explore, she continued. The only time I've been there was, shall we say, an unpleasant experience. Why are you going? I asked the obvious. We're celebrating New Year's Eve at a hotel downtown. Okay, but we won't be able to book a room, I told her honestly. That's already taken care of, she replied. Booked and paid for. All of this was freaking me out. She'd already said several times that she wanted to explain something important, and she kept referring to this day. What are you doing, Ivy? She probably saw the worry I couldn't hide. We have a lot to do, she said, as if nothing out of the ordinary was going on. We have a lot to talk about and celebrate the new year. Come on, get ready, and let's go. I hummed skeptically, but did as she asked. An hour later, we made it to shore without the aid of a wheelchair. A cab was waiting for us, and we went straight to our hotel, the Fairmont Pacific Rim. Whatever she had planned, we would do it in style. What surprised me most was Ivy's demeanor and her energy level. She seemed to be fine, and that was very different from the previous days. Hell, it was different from every day at all since I'd first seen her. We hit the stores on the first and second floors, and she got to work on her spending. We also looked into the high-end stores across the street. I'm going to buy something for Claire and our grandson. Also Richard's. I think he'll suit her. She told me when I asked what she was up to. I didn't let her buy anything. Later, at lunch, Ivy began setting the stage for our big talk. Mark, I want you to know something. I looked at her and stopped chewing. It seemed to me that this was important to her. Of all the men I've been with, she paused, you're the only man I've ever truly loved. Of all the men? I guess I wasn't ready to answer the other part of her statement. She understood, and her sigh told me so. Yes. Ivy sat up straight, as if she was about to bare her soul. I stayed with Fry for almost 6 years. 6 long years, and I can't think of a single reason why I stayed with him that long, other than my stupid pride. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. He was abusive, physically and mentally. I think almost from the first week I told you I wasn't coming home. He got what he wanted. It took me too long to realize his true nature. I didn't want to see it. So that's where all those marks came from? She already knew I'd seen them. My dear man, she hummed, trying to hide her pain. If I tell you how I got them, you'll probably lose the $150 lunch you're eating right now. I didn't budge, letting her comment roll off me like Teflon. The question remained open. Not all of it, she seemed embarrassed. Fry had psychological problems. A lot more than that. A lot of it was so disgusting that I won't share it. You think badly enough of me as it is. What happened after you left him? I was almost afraid to ask. Much of the same, she said, as if that was the most likely outcome. The only people I knew were in the music business. Most of them were friends with him or his friends. It was like fire in the pan. I didn't have any support system. And frankly, I saw it as atonement for what I had done to you and Claire. Finally, after another 6 years, I met a woman who helped me get out. Helped me get my head together. She got nothing out of it. No money, nothing. She helped me extort money from Fry. The legal system wouldn't have done anything but take money I didn't have. I'm sorry, I said, stammering. I didn't know. Oddly enough, Ivy burst into laughter. Of course you didn't, she said loudly. How could you have? You had our daughter. You had your wife and son, your job and a perfect family. I realized the laughter was hiding her other feelings. She was jealous. I used to dream, she changed the subject. Sometimes it was a dream, but I'm sure other times it was a hallucination. Either way, in the dream I was coming home to you. Claire always remained at the age of 1, just as I left her. You were waiting for me at the front door, but not in our old house, but in the new, larger one. You had a smile on your face. Not a good to see you smile, but a connoisseur's smile that said, I told you so. Every time I was ashamed of my behavior, but you accepted me anyway. Why are you telling me this? I had to know. It's simple, she chuckled. You're too kind a person to ask. And because I told you from the beginning that I needed to unwind. By and large, it will help you better than it will help me, I think. I had nothing more to say. Maybe I was afraid to speak. The conflict was insurmountable. She'd gotten exactly what she deserved, and no part of me felt triumphant about it. For dessert, Ivy ordered creme brulee. I was full after the dungeon's crab salad and lobster bisque. You're not overdoing it? She realized what I meant. No, she replied. Besides, what harm could it possibly do? I'm sitting here with you, enjoying the end of a year and the beginning of another. That is, what I get to see. Who am I to talk? She took a bite and, muttering, continued her little rambling. After I got out, she said, well, I spent most of my time trying to get better. I had to get clean first. Clean and sober in my case meant I went into rehab, and clean meant I had to get my STDs under control and then get cured. I spent a year there, and it's a good thing Brianna, my friend, helped me get the money out of Fry and the group, because the place wasn't cheap. She continued to scoop up the velvety substance, and I waited. After that, she looked up at me, I became a recluse. I experienced every wild, outrageous thing I could imagine. Most of them were bad. STD medication saved my life, but crippled my immune system. It's not a good thing when cancer runs in the family. She forked out the last remnants and savored them. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Ivy gave me a few more details I asked her for. We sat in the restaurant long after we finished. I expected her to take a nap to welcome the new year. Once again, her stamina surprised me. Ivy wanted to go to the casino, saying she had never been to one. This struck me as no less odd than all the other revelations of the day. When we arrived, Ivy handed me $300 in cash and told me we had to be conservative so we wouldn't go broke. I told her I thought she was rich. She laughed. Not rich, Mark, just well off. We played the machines for 2 hours. She won $300, and I had to laugh at the irony. I don't like to dwell on the details of that night. We ate and danced and welcomed the new year. We drank to innocence, and we drank to now. At midnight, we sang Auld Lang Syne to the best of our lungs. Those in attendance were excluded. It was a wonderful distraction from what my life had become. I expected to have to carry Ivy back to our room, but she made it on her own. I wondered if it was all muscle memory left over from her wild days. We settled into our beds, and I lay there, reflecting on the past day as she climbed into bed with me. Defensively, I pulled away, casting a questioning look at her. "Please, Mark," she said softly but insistently. "I want nothing more than a hug. This is our last night, and I want to fall asleep next to you at least one more time." I gave up. Why? I'll never know. I had 100 good reasons not to, and I was ready to lay it all out for her. But I didn't. In the morning, I woke up before she did and quietly went to the bathroom to do my morning chores. 25 minutes later, I came back and found her there, still sound asleep. I was about to go make us some coffee when suddenly it hit me. A slight odor of urine. I walked over to her bed. The sheets and comforter were up to her neck. I carefully pushed them aside. As gray as her skin had been over the past month, the color I saw scared me enough that my heart skipped a few beats. Her face was cold to the touch. I put my ear to her nose, even though I already knew what I wouldn't find. My fingers found no pulse. The next few hours passed in turmoil. Police, paramedics, medical examiner. I was questioned, or rather, harassed, until one of the officers found the information Ivy had written down in her purse. She told me about her illness, gave me doctor's contact information, and explained that we had one last holiday to celebrate her life. It was over the top, but she made it clear that she knew she could pass away during our time together and that I was in no way responsible. After reading what she wrote, the attendant actually dressed Ivy, which amazed me. I didn't think this could happen in the US even with a note. After Ivy was wheeled away on a gurney and the others left, I sat on the couch in a depressed state and cried. Damn Ivy, what a selfish bitch she had been all the way. Nothing like leaving with a bang. But then I wondered, really wondered, why was I here? What was the point? Then I cried even harder. Then I realized that I'd been sitting here for a long time. The clock read 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I had to call Claire. That conversation lasted another hour. The front desk didn't even bother me to check out. Why would they? I rummaged through Ivy's purse, since I had already decided that she had punched her own ticket. There was nothing in there. But in her suitcase, I found a letter addressed to me. Mark, if you're reading this, I owe you another apology. This seems to be the story of my life. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for every little thing. You're the best person I've ever known, and unfortunately, I've known too many. Because of that, and because of everything I did to ruin your life, I had to take the risk. Something good had to come out of all the heartache I caused, and this story had to have some kind of happy ending. That's why I invited you along for the ride. You deserve a happy life. Despite what happened with Carissa and all the other shit that's been dumped on you. So I took a risk. I did it for our daughter too. Mark, Claire needs a father. You're all she has left besides a wonderful husband. Our grandchildren will need you too. Not half of you, more like all of you. They'll need what Claire needs, the best man in the world. You may not think you are, but Claire and I do. No, she had no idea of my ulterior motives, so don't blame her. If I could take it all back and start over, I would. I've made so many terrible decisions, and I've had to pay the price. You have the rest of your life to live. Please don't dwell on what I did. You lost your wife, but you also lost a partner and confidant. You had your rock, and it has been taken away. Please find another rock to stand on. Don't get bogged down in the work you do mostly alone. Please don't be alone. You are not me, and you deserve better. To help a little, in my will you get $2.5 million. I leave it solely to you to dispose of as you see fit. I trust you to take care of Claire because you've always taken care of her. Help yourself. Find something you're passionate about and pursue it. My undying love, Ivy. It was snowing thickly the morning of Ivy's funeral, and the dampness added to our mood. I hugged Claire tightly while the Reverend read the passages. Afterward, Claire said a few kind words. We were the only ones present, and as we turned to go home, the snow turned to rain. Ivy had successfully accomplished her mission. Claire and Richard had a beautiful son, Mark II, very much like Claire's mother. I took most of the money, and with Claire's blessing, we started 2 foundations, one for battered women and one for legal and financial assistance for uninsured victims of automobile accidents, which we called the Carissa Sullivan Foundation. Brady moved back to the States and became the director of both foundations. Even though we had extra work, we were committed to spending more time together as a family. By the time I turned 65, both of my children were married, and I had 4 little grandchildren to dream about. In her final days and hours, Ivy embraced the concept of selfless care for others. In my eyes and in Claire's eyes, she deserved at least some redemption. I will never be entirely sure if this was her plan, or if her true intention was to make amends by helping me through Carissa's death. Either way, it worked. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.